Sometimes the statistically best weapons are not always the most new player friendly ones, right? And the same goes for BattleBit. There are plenty of weapons in this game that carry the most killing potential, but are also a handful to use or require an incredibly aggressive playstyle. And while the ceiling for potential is so much greater with said weapons, it also means that as a new player, there are weapons in the game that are better off for you to run with as you are learning the ropes, to get a start, if you will. And that is what I want to focus on here today. G'day there once again viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today folks, we're going to be going over the easiest weapons to use in BattleBit Remastered, especially if you're a new player. So folks, we've done plenty of videos in the past where we've gone over some tips, tricks, and different things that you can adopt into your BattleBit gameplay to take your game to the next level. We've also talked a lot about it over on our Twitch streams as well, which I highly recommend you all come and follow as well. First link in the description down below. It would be great to see you all over in our live streams and as part of that community. But one of the things that we haven't quite gone over in a lot of detail yet are what are some of the best starter weapons to roll with in BattleBit. And to make things slightly more interesting for this video, I kind of wanted to pick out a bunch of weapons that were, yes, easy to use, but also served as a stepping stone to learning critical skills that let you take your game to the next level as well. Weapons that by design encourage you to think about certain things a bit more in game that are then transferable to your skills across the board in not just BattleBit, but in first-person shooters in general. So with that in mind, let's go down the list and start talking about these weapons. And we're going to start off with the M4A1.
How original.
Yeah, look, I know, not exactly original or groundbreaking of me, but I have a point here, okay? And honestly, folks, there's just very little that the M4A1 in BattleBit Remastered can't do. It points, it shoots, it's easy to control, has a decent damage output. It's literally the jack of all trades that is available to everybody out of the gate. A true middle ground weapon. I'm serious, when it comes to the starter weapons of the game, you are going to be far-fetched to find something that is closer to a jack of all trades over the M4A1. And that very trait in of it itself makes this weapon a very easy weapon to use while you're learning the basics of the game. From CQC all the way out to medium range, the M4A1 is serviceable enough to the point where you'll have a fighting chance. So in particular, as you learn how the different maps flow, how the engagements flow, how the objectives work in BattleBit Remastered, and the variety of situations that you'll be forced into to fight over during that learning process, the M4A1 will continue to hold its own regardless, making it a great starter weapon. By being so adaptable, it gives you a fighting chance in those variety of situations, which means that you can focus on learning the flow of the game outside of worrying about whether your weapon is up to the task or not. Throw some attachments on it, and it becomes even easier to use and something that you'll go back to regularly as needed, whether that be, you know, as a gun to warm up with, or just a consistent pick that stays in your armory for being the old reliable. There's just a lot of good things to say about the M4 as both a starter, easy to use weapon for new players, but also as a long-term pick in your armory. Moving on though, I want to push our way towards another workhorse that is available to you the moment you start to play the game, the UMP45. Now, as far as the starting SMGs or PDWs are concerned, yes, the MP7 is renowned for being the king of CQC aggression amongst many of the top-end players in the game. It's got one of the fastest time to kills in the game, it's got a snappy reload, all that fun stuff, and that much remains true, and it's why the MP7 tends to overshadow the UMP45 at times and makes it the best choice for CQC out there. But as true as that may be, I personally reckon that the UMP is the better pick for newer players in the game for a couple of reasons. Allow me to elaborate here. Firstly, the UMP still sports incredible mobility, a great time to kill, and has a really nice reload time as well. While it's not quite as aggressive as the MP7, it's still pretty close to the point where it can really hold itself in CQC fights and is a really dependable SMG for that reason. But on top of that, the UMP is a weapon that, in comparison to the MP7, holds itself a little bit more confidently as engagement distances get longer. Now, why is that important in the context of a weapon that is easier for new players to use, I hear you all asking? Well, it means that while you are learning the tricks of the trade for playing aggressively, that being flanking, navigating the map in a way that lets you close the gap on opponents, all that fun stuff, you still have a weapon that is more than apt at dealing with targets as you close that gap, that medium to CQC distance. It doesn't leave you out to dry, and while you may find yourself moving on to other CQC weapons that are even more powerful in the CQC domain, this thing, the UMP, as a starter weapon while you're learning to play in the CQC domain, allows you to learn aggressive playstyles while giving you the flexibility as needed. This is a great weapon for getting into the aggressive groove with as you are learning the flow of the game as well, and I stand by that something fierce and is why it's a consistent pick for me, even as I play today. Moving on though, the F2000 is one of the newest additions to the game as far as the armory is concerned, but it has quickly been renowned as one of the easiest weapons to just pick up and use at the moment. The laser beam recoil, the crazy rate of fire, the decent magazine size, it's rapidly earned the spot in many people's loadouts for a simple point-and-click pew-pew assault rifle, and for good reason. Thanks to its insane rate of fire despite its crazy accuracy, it's also become known for being incredibly forgiving to players that are still working on their accuracy. Given it takes a few extra shots to kill a target by comparison to other weapons, it's not uncommon with the F2000 that you'll need to track a target through a lengthy burst to seal the deal, which is where the lesson with the F2000 comes into play here. Tracking targets under long bursts. In many FPS games, you'll be engaging moving targets that sometimes are moving at awkward angles or directions relative to yourself. And with that, there's a skill to learn here in managing your weapon's recoil while tracking a mobile target. The F2000 is the perfect weapon to learn this skill with, in my opinion. Given how easy its recoil is to manage, you can simply track targets without any issue, and thanks to the fast rate of fire here, you can quickly correct any overcorrections without it being too harsh on the end engagement. It's a win-win situation. Seriously, put the F2000 to work and take the time with it to work on your tracking skills, and you'll go far with not just it, but with also a lot of other weapons in BattleBit and in FPS games in general. But keeping the good old ball rolling here, guys, if there was ever a gun in this game that would aim for you if it could, it's the AUG A3. This is the gun that simply points, clicks, and drops opponents no matter the range you're fighting at. A true point-and-click adventure. I mean, we've given a few guns that category already, but I think the AUG takes the cake here. The recoil is basically non-existent, and while the damage output is nothing to write home about, there is something truly satisfying of just being able to look at someone at range and go, I don't want to see you anymore, and just dropping them immediately. I've seen the AUG go toe-to-toe with DMRs at certain ranges to great success, and it really doesn't take a whole lot of know-how to get that effect as a player. But the area the AUG struggles in particular here is damage output, as I've mentioned before. Similar to the F2000, for its unprecedented accuracy, it gives up a lot in the overall damage output. However, there is a way we can somewhat get around that here with the AUG. Crosshair placement and going for headshots. If anything, this is the weapon to start training your crosshair placement with. As you don't need to worry about recoil a whole lot here, this is the weapon that lets you start training initial crosshair placement and keeping it there over a long burst. And the AUG in particular will reward you greatly with an improved time to kill with going for headshots, so it's very much worth adopting. You can also keep testing the range in which you find success in doing this as well with the AUG, given its laser beam recoil and overall cone of fire accuracy. And obviously, as you become more comfortable with the AUG and this, crosshair placement skill you're learning with it, it's then a skill that you can start taking with you to other guns across the game as well, so on and so forth, which is going to elevate you as a player something fierce. It's such a transferable skill that applies to every single weapon in every single first-person shooter game that's ever released ever, and I stand by the AUG being a very strong contender in helping you learn these skills quickly. Now, changing gears here slightly, we've gone over some weapons that already excel in the medium range department, but there are just some situations where you need to really reach out and touch some pesky buggers out at extended ranges. And in my view, the easiest weapon to do this with in the game right now is the M110 DMR. This thing is an absolute powerhouse. Able to two-tap most enemies in the game, it's insanely potent and has an incredible magazine economy for putting down multiple targets in quick succession. And given this game has an incredibly quick muzzle velocity on most of its weapons, it's really easy to do this with. even as a new player. Now obviously when it comes to long-range environments, snipers may always be slightly more dominant depending on the player, but to the uninitiated to BattleBit Remastered, I find the forgiveness of DMRs a bit more attractive from a new player perspective, which is why I suggest a DMR over any of the other bolt-action rifles instead. And on top of that, given that this is the only DMR that I would argue can realistically two-tap the most amount of enemies in the game, requiring less shots to do the job, I still think it's the easiest to pick up and use for most players who are newer to the game. However, much like our other weapons that we've talked about already, there is a lesson to be learned here as well, and in my view, it really comes from a combination of the lessons that we've learned from the AUG and the F2000, that being consistency. Because the M110 doesn't kill in one shot most of the time, it demands a degree of consistency with your follow-up shots, being able to both track and place your crosshair and time your shots in a way to optimize your time to kill. And therefore, it teaches you the incredible skill of timing and effectively spacing your shots depending on the range you're fighting at, training you to effectively combat the recoil and keep your shots landing as fast and as accurately as possible. That level of consistency does not always come from rapidly spamming the trigger, and for that reason alone, I consider the M110 not only one of the easiest weapons in the game to use, but also a weapon that carries one of the most important lessons as well. And as we wrap things up here today, guys, I do have one last slightly controversial pick to throw into this video as a bit of an honorable mention, if you will. And I'm sure not many of you really saw this coming, but I'm going to throw the PP19 a bone here in this video. Now, let's make one thing clear. This weapon is far from the most competitive in the game, full stop. The time to kill on it, especially from an SMG perspective, which typically encourages aggressive gameplay, is dog water, let's be honest. However, I will give the weapon this degree of credit. It is one of the easiest weapons in the game to just simply pick up and start using with very little to no effort from the end user. Recoil, non-existent. Reload speed, lightning fast. As far as like, you know, shifting out your mags and timing your reloads right, this is one of the least punishing weapons to get that wrong with. Mobility is also great, as is the ADS time, which means that if you get caught off guard by another player, you're gonna be able to get the gun to ADS extremely fast. So yeah, far from the most competitive, but definitely one of the easiest guns in the game to use. And with that, there is also another lesson to be taught with the PP19 in my view. It's a hard lesson to really master, and is also the reason why I've left this to the end of the video here, but the lesson with the PP19 in my view is moderation. This gun is not a lightning fast killer. It takes time to get the job done, and while it may do it consistently, it's going to be overpowered by a lot of other guns in the game. So the PP19 teaches you to take everything in moderation. You know, only engaging one target at a time, understanding where there are times that it's just simply better not to engage. And I'm not sitting here looking to suggest that you should always be scared of engaging targets with the PP19, that's not the point. But there is without doubt scope here to be taught the art of moderation and really picking your fights. And that is also a skill that no matter how powerful your weapon is, as far as being the meta is concerned, is certainly something that is applicable to getting better as a gamer in these FPS games. And with that honorable mention out of the way, folks, I think I'm going to take this as an opportunity to wrap up today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, please do backhand the like button on the video. It's been a little bit since we've done a guide for BattleBit Remastered, so if you guys are keen on seeing more content like this, leave a comment down below. It would go a long, long way. I really appreciate all of you guys' support, and subscribe to the channel if you're new to stay up to date with all future video uploads as well. Reminded, also come check out our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/kamikaze78, and come follow the streams as well. Once again, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.